June should be a month of action on Capitol Hill. I hear all the folks on TV saying, why doesn't Biden get this done? Well, because Biden only has a majority of effectively 4 votes in the House and a tie in the Senate, with 2 members of the Senate who vote more with my Republican friends. But we're not giving up.
President Biden in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday, taking apparent shots at Democrat Senators Joe Manchin and Sinema, and tearing into new voting laws passed in several states. Biden is pushing the S1 Senate bill, which would limit states' rights over their own elections. But as the website 538 points out, both Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema have voted with Biden 100% of the time. Power panel, Leslie Marshall, Matt Schlapp joining me now. So, Matt, I come to you first because I interviewed Sinema in the run-up to when she was running in 2016. And at that time, she voted 60% with President Trump. If Biden should know anything about some of the people in his party, it is that some of them are free thinkers and will vote based on the states they serve in or their own ideologies. Apparently, he doesn't know that.
Yeah, this is right. And look, socialism is rejected not just by the American people, but specifically if you look at minority voters. There's a poll that came out with Hispanic voters that showed that almost 70% of Hispanics are rejecting these radical ideas. And Harris, the idea of not having a voter ID to vote, that was never consistent with the idea of bringing in all these new people with the civil right to vote into the system. It was never about stopping them from verifying who they were. So these were kind of like false charges that the Democrats are putting up in order to be successful in elections. And here's the thing for both Republicans and Democrats, and I can criticize my side too. You want to be a national party. If the Democrats want to be a national party, they actually have to retain seats like Sinema's, and they can't do that with a radical socialist agenda.
So how should President Biden, Leslie, handle those in his party who apparently he doesn't agree with?
Well, quite frankly, there are always going to be people left or right that don't agree with you when you're the president. But I have to say, look, Harris, you know I'm a Democrat, and I've always said Joe Manchin is a Republican wearing a blue cape with a D on it when you look at some of the things that he has done. The president was actually just telling the facts, and those are the facts. And speaking of the facts, for my friend Matt, if the American people have rejected socialism, well, we have a Democrat in the White House. We have, although a slim majority in the House, and we flipped a couple of those states like Georgia blue.
He was sold as a moderate, and you know it, Leslie. Go ahead, Matt, real quick. We'll move on after.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's just look at this very specifically. What the Democrats are trying to pass with H.R. 1 and S1 is this idea that all the state laws would be overridden, despite zero evidence of widespread voter suppression. I ask every time I go on TV, give me the list of voters who were denied the chance to vote because of their color of the skin. There is no list because blacks in Georgia turned out at record numbers. We've solved this problem by and large in this country. We should be proud of the fact that in a bipartisan way, with more Republicans voting for civil rights bills than Democrats, which is something we forget in our history, that we have come so far. I don't want to go back to this racial animosity that Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams are stoking. It won't help us unify.
Let's get to this. The Washington Post has issued a correction now to an article from February 2020 when it claimed Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas was spreading a quote-unquote debunked conspiracy theory about the origins of COVID-19 and that Wuhan Lab in China. Now, 15 months later, the updated headline reads, Tom Cotton keeps repeating a coronavirus fringe theory that scientists have disputed. Matt, I come back to you.
Yeah, this is the big problem with these oligarchs determining what's right and what's wrong. There was a time in our country where there was journalism, and there still are journalists, would allow both sides to be presented within a news article. Now, almost everything I believe in my heart to be true is canceled for a period of time in the debate. And now, when it's canceled so aggressively, like this story about how Chinese corona started, every time they cancel it, Harris, I'm getting to the point where I think that's where the truth is. That's a cynicism that's very dangerous in our society.
You know, Leslie, when you look at the correction that's run, there's no apology for not chasing down the facts as we were beginning to come to know them. And there's no acknowledgement that they didn't do their job on this. There were some journalists like myself who were asking these questions based on some of the things that were popping at the time. Why do people even read this paper if it's not going to do its job in that sense?
Harris, you and I have talked about this before on Outnumbered. And look, journalists, especially if you're an investigative journalist, should take any kind of a lead and try and track it down. And right now, we're not that far from where we were over a year ago. If you look at what happened in the media, what I see is people that were, the journalists were believing the scientists over the politicians, because at that time the international scientific community was saying, we don't think it's from a lab. And the reason they didn't think it's from a lab is because COVID-19's father and grandfather, closest relatives, if you will, virally, had an animal vector-borne connection.
Going on with that lab. And it's worse than that, right? They were believing China and its government. It's communist government. All right, we'll move on.
Oh, I don't think they were believing China and its government, because I think we all know, regardless of our ideology politically and where we fall on political spectrum, that China lies, and that China lied. Even if you take the lab element out of it, China lied about when this originated. We saw cases here in the United States going back to November.
All right, we'll move on. Yes, that's an excellent example of some of the lies. President Biden taking heat for a pretty odd comment. He pointed to TV advertisements for soap featuring biracial couples as a sign of racial progress in America. Let's watch.
How often did you ever see advertisements on television with black and white couples? 2 to 3 out of 5 have mixed race couples in them. That's not by accident. They're selling soap, man. Not a joke.
One tweet in response said the Biden administration is totally unaware of the landmines it's stepping on, a narrative they're helping foment. Another, from the guy who helped push the crime bill that locked up minorities in disproportionate numbers to whites. Leslie, your reaction to it all?
Being in a biracial relationship myself, I have to say over the years I have noticed a difference, not just in color, but also in sexual orientation. 2 moms, 2 dads, an Asian mom and an African-American dad, and honestly, that is diversity, and the advertisers are reflecting not only who we really are as a nation and what is seen and who is watching their ads, but in addition to that, they are reflecting, I believe, more tolerance, acceptance, and understanding of the changes of the demographics of our nation. So I don't think the president's completely out of touch with those remarks.
I would just be curious, Leslie, you both of us are in biracial ecumenical marriages. I don't think as a black person that I would buy more soap, though. I think I'm buying soap to get clean.
Let me speak
Go
up
ahead,
for
Matt,
Mercy. I don't know what kind of relationship we're considered, but I'm married to a Cuban, and every time we have a family get-together, I'm very well aware that we're in a bit of a blend as a marriage. And I just think the Democratic approach on questions of diversity is always they've got it and we don't. Remember, Donald Trump got the largest % of diverse voters since any Republican since 1960. And this is something that's an important thing for us to focus on.
Leslie and Matt, great to have you on the program. Thank you.